The Senate hearing chamber buzzed with murmurs as the room filled, press, aides, and senators waiting for the start of the contentious Judiciary Oversight session. The agenda was dry on paper, a review of constitutional literacy in public education programs, but the air was thick with something sharper, political theater. At the center of it stood Senator J.D. Vance, sleeves rolled up, gaze fixed forward, his tone sharpened by months of culture war rhetoric. He glanced down at his prepared remarks. 5 pages of pointed insinuations about ideological contamination in civics education and a not-so-subtle dig at progressive lawmakers. Sitting across from him, Representative Jasmine Crockett wore a calm expression, her afro haloed in the fluorescent light, nails crimson, blazer crisp. She wasn't on the official speaking roster, but the Education Subcommittee had requested her expertise after she led a coalition on constitutional curriculum equity. Vance leaned back in his chair, caught her eye, and smirked. "I trust you're ready to talk about the Constitution, Congresswoman," he said, drawing chuckles from a few onlookers. Jasmine arched an eyebrow. "I'm always ready to talk about the Constitution, Senator. I carry it in my purse." That got a few raised eyebrows. Vance crossed his arms. "Then maybe you can explain how someone who supports protests against the flag can be considered patriotic." The tension snapped, like a cable pulled too tight. "You don't get to police patriotism," Jasmine said evenly. "Especially not when your version of love for this country is conditional." Vance laughed. "Conditional? Patriotism is about loyalty, not grievance, not performance art in a house chamber." The dig landed like a slap. Jasmine leaned forward, voice steady. "Loyalty without truth is propaganda, and I will not apologize for demanding this country live up to its founding documents." Applause broke out from the observers section. Vance's jaw clenched. "If we're going to quote founding documents," he said, "I hope you've actually read them." Jasmine reached into her purse and held up a battered pocket constitution, its cover worn from use. "You're damn right I've read it," she said, "and I've lived every page that forgot someone like me." The room stilled. The session moderator gave an obligatory gavel tap, but even he seemed hesitant to disrupt the duel now underway. J.D. Vance leaned forward, voice rising, in tone but tightening in volume. "Congresswoman, you've marched against police. You've criticized the military-industrial complex. You support reparations. These are not the positions of someone who loves this country." Jasmine didn't flinch. "What you just listed," she said, "are acts of conscience rooted in the freedoms enshrined in this document." She raised the Constitution again. "Freedom of assembly, freedom of speech, the right to petition the government for redress of grievances. That's not unpatriotic, Senator. That's textbook." Vance scowled. "Textbook, maybe, but reckless in practice. Because what you call protest, others see as disorder. You're teaching people to despise the nation that gave you everything." Jasmine laughed, sharp, incredulous. "Gave me everything?" Her voice cut through the chamber like a blade. "My grandfather couldn't vote until he was 40. My father worked 2 jobs and still got redlined. I grew up hearing gunshots and learning to duck before I learned to read. America didn't give me anything. I took every inch through grit and resistance and sleepless nights. And I still believe in this country enough to demand it keep its promises." There was a slow murmur of approval in the back rows. Vance's expression darkened. "You speak in poetry, Congresswoman, but governance isn't poetry. It's law. It's duty. It's allegiance." Jasmine leaned in, voice low and firm. "You're right. So let's talk law. Let's talk allegiance. Article 1, Section 8. Congress shall provide for the general welfare. That includes every American, even the ones you think don't belong at your rallies." She opened the Constitution and began reading. "The 14th Amendment. No state shall deny to any person within its jurisdiction the equal protection of the laws." She looked up. You want to talk loyalty? Start there. J.D. Vance was no longer smirking. His posture stiffened, one hand gripping the table's edge. Don't lecture me on the Constitution, he said. I served this country. I deployed. I've seen what real threats to America look like. Jasmine's tone softened, but her words held weight, and I thank you for that. Truly. But the oath we take, whether in uniform or in Congress, is to defend the Constitution, not a flag, not a party, not a myth. The Constitution. She began flipping pages. Let's go deeper. The First Amendment doesn't say free speech for the popular. It says Congress shall make no law abridging the freedom of speech. She turned the booklet around to face him. Which means dissent is not treason. It's democracy in action. Vance looked down at the text but didn't speak. Jasmine continued, more forcefully. I know you think I'm loud. I know you think I'm angry. But let me be clear. My love for this country burns through every scar I carry from the times it failed me. She paused. That's not weakness. That's resilience. Vance snapped. You think patriotism is crying about your wounds? Jasmine stood. No, Senator. I think patriotism is refusing to let my country forget them. The gallery erupted, not in chaos, but with deliberate claps and quiet murmurs of, that's right. The moderator tapped the gavel again, now visibly unnerved. Let's stay on topic, please. Vance's face flushed. This is performance. Jasmine turned toward the audience. If reading the Constitution is a performance, Senator, then what the hell are we even doing here? The room went silent again. Vance shifted in his seat. Jasmine locked eyes with him. You call me unpatriotic for standing up, she said. But what do you call a man who claims to love America and only ever fights its progress? Vance rose to his feet. That's enough, he said, voice cold. This isn't a rally. This is the United States Senate. Jasmine didn't flinch. Then act like it, she said. The crowd gasped. She walked toward the center dais, all eyes fixed on her. Here's what I know, she said. You think patriotism is performative loyalty, but true patriotism is accountability. You don't get to cloak bigotry in the flag and call it virtue. Vance's hands curled into fists at his side. You're twisting my words. No, Jasmine said. I'm exposing them. She turned back to the document in her hand. This Constitution wasn't perfect when it was written. It counted people like me as 3/5. It denied women. It protected slavery. But the power of this document is not in what it was. It's in what we make it. And I, like millions of Americans who have been shut out, locked out, counted out, am part of making it more just. Vance sat down hard in his chair, his voice caught in his throat. Jasmine took a breath, then placed the Constitution on the center table between them. Read it again, she said. Maybe this time you'll hear all of us in it. With that, she walked out of the chamber without waiting for permission, leaving silence in her wake. No applause, no cheers, just silence, and J.D. Vance staring at the Constitution like it had just changed languages. Behind her, an aide whispered to a reporter, she didn't just win that exchange, she rewrote the terms of the debate. As the cameras captured Vance motionless, mouth slightly open, the story had already begun spinning, clips being tweeted, pundits scrambling, voters watching. And in the corridor, Jasmine finally exhaled, a quiet smile on her face. Not of triumph, but of truth. The fallout was instantaneous. Within hours, the confrontation between J.D. Vance and Jasmine Crockett was trending on every platform. Read the Constitution. Patriotism is accountability. Ye Vance silenced. Fox News anchors clutched their pearls in synchronized outrage, while MSNBC aired the full exchange twice in prime time. In back channels, GOP strategists called Vance's office, urging him to course correct, while Democrats whispered that Jasmine had just delivered a moment worthy of Barbara Jordan. But it wasn't just a social media cycle, it was a shift. Jasmine, meanwhile, returned to her office, surrounded by a quiet reverence from staffers who knew something tectonic had happened. She sat at her desk in silence for a long time, watching the clip replay with closed captions on mute. Her face was calm, but her heart raced, not from adrenaline, but from clarity. She knew the difference between a viral moment and a legacy, and J.D. Vance, well, he wasn't taking it quietly. 2 days later, he re-emerged on the Senate floor with a speech that reeked of rehearsed indignation. "We live in a country," he declared, "where victimhood is now currency, and patriotism is mocked by those who never fought for it." The chamber echoed faintly. Jasmine stood in the back of the gallery that day, arms folded, jaw tight. When Vance glanced up and saw her watching, his voice faltered, but only for a second. He pushed through it. "I will not let performative outrage rewrite the soul of America." Jasmine shook her head slowly, eyes narrowing. That wasn't a speech for the Senate. That was bait. And she knew she had no choice now but to answer it. Not in anger, but in truth. Not for the headlines. For history. The next joint session convened under new pretenses. A forum on civic responsibility and political discourse. In reality, it was Vance versus Crockett Part 2. The crowd was even bigger this time. Journalists, students, veterans, academics. The anticipation was electric. Jasmine arrived early, alone, wearing all black. Vance arrived late, surrounded by aides and cameras. "Congresswoman," he said as he passed her, "ready for round 2?